Well, welcome everybody to this officials education session entitled Empowering Young and Aspiring Officials, an Officiating Journey with Josphine Ng. Now, this has been organised by the New South Wales Joint Officials Committee. My name is Darren Wenzer. I'm the Head of Coach and Volunteer Development at Little Athletics New South Wales. I'll be hosting the session this evening. We also have Mary Macaluso, the Athletics New South Wales Workforce Coordinator, with us, and also Daniel Warren, the Little Athletics New South Wales Volunteer Manager and Business Analyst. And Daniel's monitoring the chat box this evening, so you may see him pop in every now and again during this session. Now, I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we are all situated today. I'm here in North Parramatta, which is a traditional Darug land. And I'd also like to pay my respects to elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people with us here today in, of course, what is NAIDOC Week. Now, it is fantastic to have Josephine as our guest today. Now, Josephine's journey in the sport commenced as a volunteer in 2014, and after 4 years, she became an athletics official. Now, she has since become accredited in a range of events and now primarily officiates in the horizontal jumps, on the track, and in the call room. Now, in 2020, Josephine received the Athletics New South Wales Novice Official of the Year Award. Now, during this webinar, we will chat about her journey and what officials, both new and experienced, notice I didn't say old there, I said experienced, might be able to learn from it. So hi, Josephine, and welcome.
Hi, everyone.
Lovely to have you here, Josephine. Now, let's wind things right back. Now, we said, Josephine, that you started volunteering in 2014. How did you first get involved in volunteering in athletics?
So how I first started getting involved in volunteering in athletics, which seems like quite a while ago, was that after I finished school, I still wanted to be involved in sport. And so I came along to one of the events and met lots of officials from different areas, such as administration and also out on the field as well at the time. And they were telling me about their role, and it sounded really interesting to me. So then I wanted to do more and come back to volunteer at more events.
So what were some of those volunteering jobs that you did, Josephine? What were some of the specific things that you were doing back in those years?
Back in those days, did quite a bit of athlete check-in, as well as operated the wind gauge at both the field events, especially at the long jump. I also did collect some implements at the throws events as well for a short time.
That's fantastic. And from that early involvement in volunteering in athletics, how did you make the transition from event volunteer to an athletics official?
So I had held a level 0 officiating accreditation from Sports Australia. This is an online exam, which is for sports in general and not sports specific. But I had spent like a lot of time. I was also completing uni at the time, but back then the level 1 sports specific athletics accreditations were paper-based exams, which meant it's a bit difficult to complete them during the time because they had to be done on specific days. And I think from memory, back then they were done at late at night during the week. But since then, the system has been overhauled and is now Athletics Australia has put them online. So for level 1, there are now 4 online modules, and for each of the 12 disciplines, ranging from jumps, throws, as well as track, starting, out of stadia walks, and a few others.
That's okay. Now you're interested in sharing. Let's see, a graphic here. Which here we go. I've gone too far. There you go. So that's something that was put together by Mary, I believe, at Athletics New South Wales. Is we can have a look there at a bit of the pathway. Did you have anything that you wanted to add to that at all, Joe?
So as I was saying, level 0 was that anyone can start. That's not sport specific. That's just what like officials do in general across all the sports. So whether it be soccer, rugby, athletics, swimming, you can all sit that exam. Whereas level 1, it becomes sport specific. So it was in the specific disciplines such as long jump, high jump, pole vault, as well as javelin, discus, and the track and walks as well. And then after that, there is a level 2, which I hold in admin and jumps, and I'm currently in the process of completing it for out of stadia and track. This is where there is a online component first, followed by a practical card, which is now based on competency in the specific areas, as well as a 2-hour exam afterwards. After you have completed that, you can then write to the education committee to apply to be a level 3 official, which requires 20 days of practical experience and a mentor. And then after that, you may be able to join level 4 or 5 as a international technical official. So level 4 is the Australian technical officials, which is at the Oceania level, whereas level 5 is at the international level. And I can see that we have a few of those people on this call tonight.
In fact, it's a very good graphic, isn't it? I think Mary, you've done a great job in putting those together. If anybody hasn't seen those and want to find them, they are on the Athletics New South Wales website in the officials, under the officials tab, I think, if I've got that right. So there. So it shows you a little bit of the pathway there. So for those people here who haven't started officiating or are very early in their officiating journey, there's a very clear image and diagram there of how you can progress. Okay, now Josephine, so you've become an athletics official, and you moved into athletics officiating. Now, in your experience, now what have been some of your I suppose favourite officiating moments or achievements? Would you like to tell us a little bit about those?
Sure. So I've had a few. So probably the nationals in the past couple of years, because they've doubled up as the Olympic trials for last year, and this year it has been the Commonwealth Games and World Championship trials. It was a great opportunity for me to experience officiating at the high performance level, and also because I worked in the core room at these events. It's great to see how the athletes reacted, or what they are like right before they step out onto the competition arena. And
sorry, go ahead there, Josephine. Did I interrupt you there?
oh no.
I was just going to say, we actually, you give me a few photos. I'd love you to talk. So what's happening here now, Joe? That's now looking at the background. Is that a Little Athletics Championships there?
Yes, this is last year's state championships.
And what was your role at these particular championships? What can you tell us about that photo?
This event, I was recording the triple jump. And as you can...
I was going to say, it looks like the weather's a bit better there than what we've seen recently too, Joe.
Yes. This was the week after that it had been washed out.
Okay, so you're there at a Little Athletics event. And what can you tell us about this particular photo?
This particular event, this was very important to me, as this was the first event that I had officiated as a qualified technical official, and this was at the 2018 All Schools.
Fantastic. And what can you tell us about that one there? What's this photo all about there, Joe?
So this is, as I mentioned earlier, this is at this year's nationals, where I was working in the core room.
So you certainly, so you do your officiating from little A's right up to like a national level. Yeah,
that's correct. I like a lot to have a bit of variety on the different aspects and of athletics.
Now, I must admit, Joe, the next photo I'm going to show I absolutely love. Everyone just looks so happy. What's this photo? Tell us about this photo.
This photo was at one of the all-comers meets. We were actually a bit short-staffed that day, so we had officials who normally officiate on the track also come and learn how to officiate on the field with us as well. So it's good to know like the officials are adaptable and that they can fill a variety of roles.
Look, and it just looks like you're just having a great time, and there seems to be a fair bit of camaraderie there and a bit of team spirit. Is that how you describe that?
Yeah, so because there was only a few of us, like we worked really well together to ensure that all the athletes could compete in the competition. And it is for reasons like this is why we need more officials. So if anyone on the call hasn't been an official yet, it's time to come join us.
And we should say, Joe, I suppose those photos, I think some of them, if not all of them, are David Tarbotton's photos. So we should just recognise that he's supplied some of these photos here this evening. So thanks for that, David. So yeah, no, as I said, I absolutely love that photo. Lots of smiles, and everyone just looks like they're like having a great time there. So we've just talked about some of your favourite things that you've done, Joe, and some of your biggest achievements. And we've seen you smiling in photos there and smiling officials and camaraderie and things like that. Now, in your officiating journey, has there been any barriers as you coming in as a young official, or should I say, I could say hurdles, can I, in athletics terms, in track and field terms? Has there been any barriers or hurdles that you have faced as a young official and starting your journey, and how, and if so, how have you been able to navigate these, and how have you, what strategies have you taken?
I think that barriers in officiating are common, but more importantly, it's how you get through those barriers that's more important. So one of those examples is probably the opportunity to officiate in areas in order for you to complete your practical card. So for example, last season, I started my track level 2 qualification, but I found it extremely difficult to get a start on the starting panel, which is like one of the requirements of the track. But since then, the practical cards have been overhauled. So now that they are competency based, so you need to explore all the different areas rather than having the standard 15 days that was on previously. Another barrier for young officials, I think, is the perception of being heard, but you can be heard. And this is why I'm here tonight, to raise awareness about young officials. Also that there is a misconception that in order to be an official, you have to officiate every single week, but this is simply not the case. If you officiate regularly and you come to these webinars and keep yourself up to date, there's no reason why you can't call yourself an official. And probably the final barrier is not knowing where to start, because I understand that officiating, there are lots of areas. For example, in level 1, there are 12 disciplines, but how to get over that is, I think you should just start coming to the events, come have a look, come have a try and see what you like and what you don't like. Or you can also speak to Daniel and Mary, who will be able to guide you, as well as other officials who are there. So, because everyone's journey is unique and you never know where it might take you.
Yeah, there's some excellent advice there, Joe, from someone who's been just through that journey. And look, if anybody's got any comments, I will remind you, don't wait for me to invite you to use the chat box. If you've got any particular questions, anything you'd like further clarification on, if you'd like Joe to speak about, in further detail about anything that she's mentioned, please feel free to pop it into the chat box. And look, if we don't get to your question right away, we will come back to it. We've got Daniel watching the chat closely, and he'll make sure that we do get back to it. So Joe, your officiating journey, there's been some great moments, there's been a few barriers and things like that you've had to overcome, but is who or what helped to shape that journey?
A lot of things have helped me to shape that journey. One of the main types of people who've helped me have been other officials. So from day one, when I was volunteering, there were lots of officials who were there to help me, show me, guide me in how to do their jobs. For example, how to be in the athlete check-in, and how to do spike checks in the call room. There were also officials who also taught me how to operate photo finish over the past couple of seasons, as well as those on the track and those in the jumps as well. Another thing that had helped me on my officiating journey is my involvement in Sports Australia's Women Leaders in Sports program. This provided me with the opportunity to raise awareness about officials in a wider sporting context, as that program included athletes, coaches, and sports administrators. Furthermore, tonight's webinar has also been a really important part of my officiating journey because it has allowed me to advocate for young officials. And I can tell you, back in 2014, there were no officials under the age of 30. But currently, we have 20 that are under 30. And I strongly believe that there is a potential for this number to increase rapidly. So if I can encourage just one person on this call who hasn't joined officiating yet to become one, I think that would be a great start.
Yeah, look, again, some great things. And look, I do have to let everybody know and recognise, Joe, that this webinar, this session was your idea. So I think you need congratulations, and to see it now, come to fruition today and actually be doing it. So from the first suggestion that you made a little while ago, I think it's wonderful that this has been, this is now happening, and will help, a number of officials. How do we get more others involved in officiating, Joe? What do you reckon? And I invite ideas through the chat box. I'm going to ask you, Joe, but I'm going to invite everyone. How do we motivate others to get involved in officiating?
So I think one of the main selling points to get people, in my opinion, to get people involved in officiating is the prospect of international representation, especially over the next 10 years, as next year, the World Cross Country will be held at Bathurst. In the next 4 years, the Commonwealth Games will be held at Ballarat, and in the next 10 years, the Olympics will be held in Brisbane. Another area in which we can motivate others is to inform people that not only by officiating do you help yourself by learning more skills, developing your officiating in both the practical and theoretical concepts and meeting other officials, but you benefit others by helping the athletes, by ensuring that their attempts are valid and that they can compete at the highest level.
And again, I invite, if you've got any other ideas, everyone, because we're all looking for ideas for people to get involved in officiating there at all ages. Of course, we are talking a lot about young officials this evening, but of course, people can enter officiating at any age, of course. Now, Joe, we do actually have a few experienced officials on the call this evening. In fact, we saw that people officiating 10 years or more was our biggest group this evening. Now, from your point of view, what can experienced officials do to help new or young officials feel welcome and accepted?
I think that from a theoretical perspective, they can host a different variety of seminars and webinars. So, for example, there's one next week on post-event, but also to show them about the jury and other areas that aren't widely explored. They could also make some cheat sheets or top tips and make them widely accessible. And in terms of practicals, I think that we should at each event welcome any new officials at the beginning of each event and also recognise them in the newsletters or on the website as well.
Sorry. I was just saying, Lyle's popped in there and mentioned that, as you said, and something I was going to agree with was volunteers and officials when they first start. It's very important to have a very welcoming and positive experience. And I'm in a similar journey to Josephine. The very first event I ever volunteered at, I was just in uniform. And then Katrina Morrow, who's on here tonight, got me to second her at the long jump. So that kind of be positive, encouraging experience. Just like throw in, get a go, you'll be right. Just having that positive experience of people nurturing and encouraging you, even though you may not have been involved in athletics before, is a very important start to get people in and interested.
So it's very, it's certainly a good and useful comment, and we agree that it's so important that people have a positive experience when they start anything, I suppose. But we are talking about officiating this evening. I'd be keen if anybody has some really practical tips of what that actually looks like. Now, whether you're an experienced official and you've done particular things to welcome new officials, or if you're a new official and you've been made to feel welcome, I'd love to see if you could put some of those things in the chat box. How were you made to feel welcome? What did that actually look like? Because we can say, yeah, let's make people feel welcome, but to get some really practical ideas, some definite I suppose examples would be really useful. So if you've got any ideas, please pop them in the chat box and we can share them with others. But I suppose that what we've seen there, if you are an experienced official, you do play quite a role in bringing new officials through. So yeah, as I said, please feel free to put things in the chat box. I know sometimes it takes a while. They don't pop up immediately, and we will come back to some of those things if we don't straight away. So Joe, sorry, Daniel, you're about to say something?
Yeah, I was just saying another important thing that I found was, I've got 3 mentors, which I'm quite lucky to have. But the biggest thing that they did early on in my first season was just little follow-ups. So if there was something like I made a mistake, or, if I looked, how I was going, they would check the next event or the event after how I'm going. Does they need any help? So that follow-up was really important to make them feel welcome and supported. And it was genuine, not just because I want to, it's genuine concern that I was just making sure we're doing the right thing, and any help and questions had to be asked.
Thanks for that, Daniel. Joe, is there anything else that you'd like to add, having heard that conversation that we just had?
Similar to what Daniel said, buddying and mentoring with some more experienced official to show you the correct technique. For example, in the long jump, how to break a pit, that's really important, and it also makes you feel like you're not alone. Also, there is a formal mentoring program being put in place by the Joint Officials Committee, where they're trying to pair up the mentors and mentees. And I think a good idea from my perspective as to how to match them would probably be according to their discipline. For example, jumps, throws, track, and out of stadia. And also they could also run a networking event. So where everyone who is a mentor and everyone who's mentee can come together and meet each other, get to know each other, and see who wants to be paired up with who. Also, if it is to be done online, a Zoom breakout room might also be a good idea.
And they're the examples that we're actually looking for there. So that's fantastic, Joe. Thanks for that. If anybody's got anything to add to that, please feel free to do so. Yes, you did hear about that, the New South Wales the officials mentoring network that's being driven, I suppose, by the New South Wales Joint Officials Committee. There may be some other people here on the call this evening who are involved in that, either as a mentor or a mentee. But over the next little while, we do hope that you hear a little bit more about that. I'd be interested to hear if anybody has been involved in mentoring in the past, either as a mentor or a mentee. If you'd like to, share your experiences in the chat box and what worked. I see, Daniel, there might be a comment there in the chat.
Yeah, so Emma Bowley from Temora out of regional New South Wales actually mentioned there that she kind of felt welcome because they let her ask questions and gave her the opportunity to have a go, like nobody's ego got in the way kind of thing. Sorry, the box just wound down because more people are jumping in, which is always good. And obviously just willing to help, let her help and get set up and appreciate the help. So just giving people the opportunity, allow people to learn from doing. Everyone learns differently, so getting in there and having a go and allowing people to have that natural attempts is great. And then John's mentioned something else in there as well. I think that's a follow-on from a mentor's point of view. Take the time out of the day to explain things to officials, give them the time and effort and listening where required. And then obviously doing debriefs at the end of events. And I concur with John there, debriefs are very important. New officials can get stuck or focus on a negative experience because they've made a mistake and they think about that and they go, why did I do that? Why did that happen? And obviously, letting them know it is natural to make mistakes and that's how we learn. I think that's another important one as well.
There's another one there, Daniel, if you can see that.
Yeah. So this is, I'll let Joe answer this first and I can answer it after, but from David and Katrina Morrow, what exposure did you have to athletics prior to starting officiating? School level, little A level, or other? So Joe, if you want to answer that first and I'll answer that after from my point of view as well.
Yeah, so at the school level, I was competing as an athlete at school, and then after I finished school, still wanted to be continuing to be involved in athletics. So had a look at officiating.
What were your events, Joe? What did you like doing as an athlete?
I did a little bit of everything.
And from my point of view, this might surprise a lot of people, but prior to me starting officiating 3 years ago, pretty much zero. The only athletics experience I've had is I remember once I got a second place in school in javelin. But other than that, never done a little athletics before. Didn't really watch it much on television. But now it's probably one of my top 3 sports to be involved in. So really loving it quite a lot. And yeah, it just shows that you don't have to be necessarily experienced or an athlete to jump in. Have a go, and if you enjoy sport, enjoy athletics, and nurturing those kids and older senior athletes, and get involved.
So there's some useful discussion happening in the chat box there. Thanks for those questions, everybody. And it looks like there might be another one there, Daniel.
Yeah, it's just mentioned that Katrina and David have been great unofficial mentors for both jumps and throws, and I think I echo those sentiments as well as Joe would. It's people like Katrina and David and everyone else that just gives everybody their time of day, takes the opportunity to teach them, being that nurturing and encouraging kind of figures in officiating. And we do this official mentoring program coming up. It's also those unofficial networks that you make with people that make it such a difference, and just allowing those natural evolutions between people to bond and socialize. And like I said, anybody in officiating that you ask, if you ask them, do you have a mentor? Do you have somebody that you can turn to? Everybody says yes. Everybody can name 1 or 2 people that got them involved that they can turn to at any point in time. And even, the highest level officials, international officials, still have people that they turn to and bounce off. So it's a really important thing, I think, within the officiating world. Yeah,
and I think you're right there, Daniel. Officiating can be formal, where you are actually matched up with someone, or it can be informal. Can't it? Relationships can develop, and it can be on a long-term basis, or it can be on a short-term basis, which I've actually heard called flash mentoring. I love that term, flash mentoring. A one-off even it can have a positive effect and can be a great learning experience. So the New South Wales Joint Officials Committee's mentoring program, we're not looking at any way in interrupting any mentoring that's actually taking place already. We're just hoping to facilitate some mentoring in people who are looking for a mentor and haven't yet been able to find one. So Joe, any other comments on mentoring at this stage, or what experienced officials can do to help inexperienced or new officials?
Just based on what you and Daniel both said, yeah, I think that even with flash mentoring, as you just mentioned, that could be useful. It could help someone. It could be a career-defining moment for that person.
And I think there might be one more. Sorry, Daniel, there might be one more comment in the chat box there, is there?
Yeah, Lyle mentioned too that you don't need to be an expert or a veteran to make somebody feel welcomed. It's just part of, I guess, human nature. You can know little to none about the sport, but still leave an impression on somebody just by being a positive person and taking the time out of your day to support them and check how they're doing.
Yeah, thanks for that, Daniel. Thanks, Lyle. That's a really good observation there. I suppose, Joe, what do you think makes a good official? And again, I'd love comments in the chat box. And I see there's more happening there, but I'm just going to go over to Joe for a bit here, Daniel. What to you makes a good official?
In my perspective, what makes a good official is an official that is knowledgeable, fair, adaptable, doesn't startle the athlete, and has positive body language.
Actually, that's an interesting comment that you just made there, Joe. Doesn't startle the athletes. I find that interesting. What would you like to expand on that? What is and describe what you might mean by that?
What I mean by like starting with athletes is like you don't want to scare them. For example, if you're at the start line and then you say something really loudly over the speaker, you might scare them before they're about to be in the set position.
I'd never thought of that before. I think that's really an interesting one. And again, I can see there's some more chat coming up in the chat box here, and keep it coming, everybody. You've got anything else there, Daniel?
Yeah, so Peter just mentioned that whilst it is kind of, some sort of reward or an aim to get to, Commonwealth or international kind of events, just to also realize that not everybody's motivated the same. Not everybody wants to be an elite official, but they're happy just being at the center level doing a carnival or zonal region. So again, it's allowing people to feel comfortable. People only want to go to that level, then by all means let them stay at the level they want to be and help them where they're most motivated, because naturally you get the most out of people where they feel like they're doing the best and where they're getting the most reward out of it themselves as well. There's another comment here. Just giving people opportunities. So I think this is touching on barriers as well. Some people are a bit hesitant to go to the next level. They feel like they may not be ready or, they're years away, but giving people the chance to do it at another level, at a higher level with somebody, with a mentor, with somebody to help them out can help overcome that barrier. That's an example for me as well. I always feel like I'm in a level higher than what I should be at the time, but there's so many supportive people around you at those competitions, at those events that can help you out. And, once you do it once, and you kind of, get comfortable with it and keep progressing.
If there's any other comments on what people would, what they think makes a good official, even if it's one word or a sentence, please feel free to share that in the chat box, and we'll share it with everybody. Now, Joe, learning as an official and developing as an official, how do you continue to learn as an official? How do you develop your craft?
So continuous learning in athletics as an official is very, very important, especially with the rules updates as well. So they're not stagnant. So every time a new rule is introduced, we are usually briefed about it. And there are sometimes a webinar on this. So I usually go to the webinar seminars. I also ask the officials a lot of questions, and sometimes about hypothetical situations, as to ask them what they would do if this happened. Also to see it from a practical perspective by attending events and seeing it actually happen, as well as asking for feedback, listening to different stakeholders. And I always have that desire to be better at the next event than I was at the one previously.
Thanks for that, Joe. And I see the chat box is running hot again there, Daniel.
Yeah, Emma's kind of confirmed what Josephine said about just listening and learning. So taking in observations where you're there, just watching others, learn from other people as well. You can learn so much just by watching the athletes perform, but also other officials in their roles as well. And then Kirsten's just talked about introductions. So that's just to get people knowledgeable of other people, introducing them at new events. If it's the first time they're officiating a level, and a lot of people might not know who they are. It's always good in that briefing of the morning, just to encourage them and introduce them to everybody, so that way they feel welcomed, and they can kind of introduce where they've come from and how they've got in there.
So even that initial breaking of the ice is important. Just to get to know someone else's name and be formally introduced to someone is useful, I suppose. And everybody, if you've got any other ways that you like to continue to learn, if you've got any tips for anybody, whether you know a good book, website, podcast, whatever, how you learn as an official, what have you done? It'd be useful to share here. It's a great opportunity to do so. So again, if we miss your chat in the chat box, we will come back to it. Do not worry about that. So Joe, you've been officiating for a few years now, but you're still early in your officiating journey, I suppose. What are your future officiating aspirations? Where do you want to go with your officiating?
I have quite a few places I'd like to go. One of them would probably be an international debut, whether that be at World Cross Country, Commonwealth Games, or the Olympics. But I understand the reality of this and that it may not eventuate. However, I believe that having an athletics officiating qualification will put me in the box seat to be a sport-specific volunteer at an event, which the qualification is seen to be ranked highly compared to people who don't have one, because you'd have knowledge of the discipline as well as about, for example, hurdle placement, as well as the safety of them, and also how to, because you've been in athletics before, that you'd know like what happens at an event. Also, for now, I might like to attempt my level 3s sometime soon. But for now, I'd like to just continue officiating in a range of areas and events and get as much feedback as I can from other officials so that I am in a position to try and achieve these goals.
And it sounds like you're pretty keen on encouraging others too, Joe. You'd like to bring a few other people through with you and maybe lead the way for some others.
Yeah, hopefully to see more officials in the future, young officials in the future.
I'll go back to the chat box there, Daniel Shelley. It looks like there's another comment.
Yeah,
there.
so this is something that Mary and I can take on board and talk about it with our state associations, but also at a national level in regards to just supporting regional officials. Obviously, there is a lot of expense being official with travel and accommodation, etc. Depending on the type of event, most officials may get something, may not. For nationals, for example, if you live more than 200 kilometers away, you actually get assistance. Whereas if you're less than 200 kilometers, you don't. So that's a good thing for regional officials. They get that money that metro people wouldn't. But at the same time, just trying to encourage more and more regional officials to get involved. And that can be done through competitions like examples taken by or anything like that. Regional competitions, one in Nowra that ANSW did. So just bringing those competitions around regionally will also help support. But Emma, we do appreciate that and understand that that is quite a bit of a barrier to entry. And we'll take that on board and have a look at it further. There's another thing here too from David and Katrina. So this is a question. So it's kind of David and Katrina asking, where do we get these officials from? What kind of people do we look at encouraging? Because as we all know, people that have been in the officiating world, it is very concerning, I guess, that there's a lot more officials, like the poll said, just on this short sample size, that most people have been in the field and the sport for quite a while. And in 15, 20 years, where are we going to be? So it's a matter of trying to find people. But I guess it just, Josephine can have some input there as well. And something we can look at is just finding the people that want to get involved in athletics, that have that passion for sport, that want to keep helping out others, whether that be people at, sporting colleges like ACPE, or whether that be, people that want to do charity work such as Duke of Ed and want to get involved in sport, and coaches potentially. But there's quite a lot of people that we've got to look at and see who wants to get involved and has the spare time in this kind of busy world that we live in.
Joe, would you add anything to that? Have you got any ideas about where we can actually find new officials? I think from my perspective, I think maybe Little Athletics might be a great place. So for those who are 17 and aging out that may not want to continue into senior athletics, they can still come to athletics events just from an official's perspective and like see the sport from like a different angle, I suppose.
Carmel's mentioned there too that it is difficult to get volunteers, and like I mentioned, the world we live in is just getting busier and busier and busier. So trying to find people that are willing to give up their time is getting harder and harder. And that is a big thing, not just in our sport, in sports all across the country. Getting officials and volunteers is getting noticeably harder and harder as the years wear on. Yeah.
And there's been certainly some things that have occurred over the last couple of years that haven't helped, yes, hasn't there? So that's a really interesting thing also. I see there's something from, I think it was Nathan there also too, Daniel?
Yeah, so Nathan just commented on his experience that has come from Little A's, both competing as a volunteer. He's about to start his officiating journey, so welcome. Can't wait to see you around. But yeah, as just echoing Josephine's sentiments, that starting out at Little A's and helping out is kind of a great opportunity to get around it. And obviously, even senior athletics, they do centre level competitions as well. Narrabeen does a pole vault meet. There's lots of weekly meets as well. The centres are everywhere. So it doesn't just have to be Little A's for grassroots. There are grassroots competitions around on multiple levels that people can attend if they don't want to go straight for a state kind of competition.
And keep those comments coming through, everybody. They are very, very useful. Now, Joe, moving on. What do you really love about officiating? Why do you keep coming back? And why are you going to continue officiating?
Well, there are a lot of reasons why I like to officiate. Firstly is to learn off other officials and to share knowledge, because as I'm relatively new, it's great to hear the wisdom and insights from other officials who have been in their discipline for a while, and to learn from the best. Also, to meet new people, as well as to challenge myself and explore different areas. So, for example, I've been around admin, jumps, the track, and more recently in the photo finish as well.
Thanks for that, Joe. And yeah, Daniel, there's something else there?
Yeah, so Emma's one of our presidents at the local centre as well. So she's just mentioning that it's good to empower parents at the weekly nights and the weekly meets as well, to get involved, because, you know, going to a competition on a weekend is 8 hours, 10 hours out of your day. And anybody here that has young kids or has had kids before can attest to it. Is very time consuming to find a space in your weekend to spend a whole day out at a competition. So just that 1 hour, that 2 hours on a weeknight where you are there already with your kids, get involved, you know, ask questions, officiate, take on an event for the night, see how you go. And if you like, there's no reason why you can't jump onto a zone event or a regional event as well. Yep. And there was another question here too, just asking about the need to nominate. So that's to do with the joint portal. So we have a joint portal between ANSW and LANSW for officials. We're happy to send out information to all participants on how to register for that if you'd like. It is on the ANSW website. But pretty much if you jump on that portal and sign up, you'll get newsletters from us, which Mary puts a lot of work into to making sure they're up to date and full of content. So yeah, you'll get information on when nominations open. Like I said, we do have that officials website with all events listed there, so you don't even have to be part of the portal. You can just jump on that website and nominate, and we'll give you your appointments once approved. And then he's talking about social schedules as well. So that's just for school carnivals. So people who maybe this is a thing for young people, if they aren't just wanting to volunteer and they do want to make some money on the side to help them out, they can help out at school carnivals as well. So if they're doing university and they've got a day or two free, there's no reason why they can't get experience and get paid for it by jumping into school carnival to help out and get those kids going through as well.
No worries. Now, and if you wanted to add anything to Joe mentioned before, what she really likes about officiating, what keeps her coming back, if you would like to pop anything into the chat box, let us know what keeps you coming back. Please do so. A final question, Joe, before we see if there's any more questions from the audience. What would be your number one tip for new or developing officials?
My number one tip would probably be to definitely take a grasp of every opportunity, because one, they may not come again, and two, you never know, it might be a career defining moment for you. Like, you might really enjoy, like, had you not taken up the opportunity, like, you may not have like been able to explore an area that you would have wanted to.
I'd like to pass that question over to all our participants, our attendees here. If you had a number one tip for a new or developing official, what would it be? Or if you could give it a tip to yourself back when you started officiating, something that you know now, looking back, what would it be? That'd be fascinating to share. If I'll, give you the opportunity to, if you've got something to pop that in the chat box. And of course, if there's any other questions that you would like to ask, we're almost at a finish here, where I will be stopping the recording soon, but I will give you a moment if you've got any comments about what we just talked about to pop up in the chat box, and Daniel will keep an eye on that. Now, Josephine, look, it's been great having you as our guest here this evening, and you've given us some really good ideas, and we've talked about some really interesting topics. So well done on driving this webinar and coming up with the ideas. It's really been great having you do this, and all the best going forward. And you know, I'm sure we'll see you around on the track again soon. So any final comments, Joe?
I'd just like to thank Little Athletes New South Wales and Athletes New South Wales and the Joint Officials Committee for allowing me to put on this webinar and to shine a light on young officials. I'd also like to thank everyone who is watching this webinar or like on it now or just listening to the recording for coming and supporting me, and to hopefully we can have more new and young officials in the future.
Well done, Joe. And what I will now do now, everybody, I am going to shut down the recording. I can see there's a little bit more chat coming in the chat box, which we can deal with. But for those people watching the recording, thanks for doing so, and we hope that you've really enjoyed this session. And thank you very much, Josephine.